All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a topic that, honestly, hits pretty close to home for a lot of us. We're going to look at how we might be completely unintentionally stressing out our dogs. We try so hard to give them the absolute best lives possible. But as we're about to see from some of the latest veterinary research, there is often a massive communication barrier between our two species.
Oof, it's kind of a tough question to ask ourselves, right? We literally adore our dogs, but our everyday human behaviors might be speaking a totally different, highly stressful language to them. Dogs are these incredibly sensitive masters at reading body language, but because they interpret the world so differently than we do, the things we do out of pure love, or even just out of daily habit, can actually cause them a lot of hidden distress. To understand why, we first need to understand what canine stress actually looks like. So to get a baseline, let's look at the science. Dr. Karen Oberall, she's a veterinary behaviorist, points out this absolutely crucial difference between fear and anxiety. While true fear in a dog always involves avoidance, a clear intent to get away and stop interacting, anxiety is a bit more complex. Actually, it's a lot more complex. It's the apprehensive anticipation of danger. What makes anxiety so incredibly tricky is that an anxious dog might still put themselves right in the middle of a social setting, even though they are profoundly uncomfortable. Their internal arousal spikes, which basically prohibits them from accurately observing and processing the world around them. Now, here's where it gets wild. The most subtle signs of distress are almost always completely missed by us owners. Sure, we notice if a dog is excessively whining or pacing frantically, but Dr. Oberall notes that things like lip licking, nose licking, suddenly freezing in place, or just dropping their ears, those are all non-specific signs of anxiety. A dog that's just sitting perfectly still and licking its lips might be experiencing massive internal stress, but because they aren't causing a disturbance, we humans just totally overlook it.
So the big takeaway here? We've got to evaluate distress and occurrency and terminology that actually means something to the dog, rather than just waiting for obvious signs that bother us, like a chewed-up couch or an accident on the rug. Too often we evaluate client complaints instead of looking at the dog's subtle physiological signals. Dogs who just freeze, withdraw, or pant might actually be more profoundly affected by anxiety than the dog who's tearing apart the living room.
Moving on to Section 1, Calming Signals, Decoding Canine Behavior. To really understand this, we're going to look at a super fascinating pilot study from the Journal of Veterinary Behavior. Researchers wanted to scientifically assess what are known as calming signals. So, they set up this off-leash enclosure and observed 24 dogs, some familiar, some strangers, during 5-minute off-leash encounters. The owners were told to just stay on the edge and let the dogs communicate naturally.
Get this. Over the course of the study, researchers logged a staggering 2,130 specific calming signals. And these behaviors weren't just random. They happened primarily when the dogs were interacting closely with one another. The most frequent signals they deployed were turning their head away, licking their own nose, freezing in place, and turning their body away. Remember how Dr. Oberall mentioned lip licking and freezing as signs of anxiety? Well, here we see dogs actively using them in social interactions to manage tension. It's like their own secret language.
And honestly, this just brilliantly illustrates how hard our dogs work to keep the peace. The researchers tracked what happened when a dog received an aggressive behavior, like a growl or a snap, and then responded by flashing one of these calming signals. The results? Totally incredible. Nearly 80% of the time, the aggressive interaction successfully de-escalated. These signals literally function to lower the temperature of the whole interaction and stop a fight before it even started.
The study also found that dogs actually change their dialect based on who they're talking to. When they met unfamiliar dogs, they deployed distance-creating signals, head turning, nose licking, basically making themselves look smaller to ease the uncertainty. But when they were hanging out with familiar friends, they engaged in way riskier behaviors, like actually licking the other dog's mouth. So they are constantly reading the room and adjusting their communication to maintain harmony. Which brings us to Section 2, the human culprits. Are you stressing them?
According to the veterinary experts at Hound & Company, our everyday human environments are basically a minefield for our pets. Dogs thrive on predictability. So if you have inconsistent daily routines, like feeding them or walking them at random times, it leaves your dog feeling deeply uncertain. Loud, sudden noises, like vacuums or hair dryers, completely overwhelm them. And how we leave the house, that matters immensely. Slipping out without warning confuses them. But doing the whole dramatic, emotional exit with hugs and apologies, that spikes their anxiety right before they're left all alone.
Okay, consider this staggering number for a second. 100,000. Dogs have a sense of smell up to 100,000 times stronger than humans. Because of this, things we think smell amazing, your favorite scented candles, essential oils, cleaning products, could actually be a massive environmental stressor for your dog. Think about it. It's like being trapped in a room with a smell 100,000 times stronger than heavy perfume. No thank you.
And then we've got the social stressors. This is where human and canine languages completely clash. We view a tight hug or steady eye contact as pure love, right? But dogs often interpret staring or looming over them as a direct threat. If you lean over to hug a dog, especially one you don't know well, you might notice them freezing, turning their head away, or licking their nose. As we just learned from the calming signal study, that is them frantically trying to de-escalate what they perceive as a highly tense situation. On top of that, using inconsistent training commands or leaving them alone for too long also massively spikes their stress levels.
And beyond just our specific actions, we have to remember that dogs are absolute masters at reading emotional energy. If there are arguments, stress, or even just a weird, subtle tension in your home, that becomes tension in your dog. Add in a lack of mental stimulation or physical exercise, and that quickly translates into frustration, pent-up energy, and those exact stress behaviors we've been talking about.
All right, let's wrap this up with Section 3, building a calmer home and speaking their language.
Look, by making just a few small, consistent adjustments, we can dramatically reduce their daily anxiety. First up, keep those wake-up, feeding, and walking routines as predictable as possible, even on the weekends. Second, respect their physical boundaries. Learn their body language and let them initiate the close contact, instead of forcing hugs on them. Make sure everyone in the house is using the exact same clear training commands. And finally, give them a safe, quiet, totally fragrance-free space they can retreat to when things just get to be too much.
Remember, no pet parent is perfect, and your dog doesn't expect you to be. But by recognizing their subtle signals, the lip licks, the head turns, the freezing, we can finally stop missing their calls for help. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Based on everything we've unpacked in this explainer today, what small change will you make today to finally speak your dog's language? Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.